everyone. Welcome to Wednesday. And you know what that means, at least for a few weeks? That means it's Boba Fett Day. I am Eric. This is Kim. We are going to talk about the Book of Boba Fett, Episode 3, aka Chapter 3, The Streets of Mos Espa, which I think would make a great song, by the way, The Streets of Mos Espa. We're going to go into full spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, go check it out. Come back and watch this video. If you have seen it or you don't care about spoilers, stay with us. 3, 2, 1, full spoiler zone for the Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 3, The Streets of Mos Espa. This was written by Favreau. Jon Favreau has written all the episodes so far. I wonder if anyone else wrote for the show, or maybe it's just all a Favreau joint. We'll find out. And Robert Rodriguez returning to direct this one. He didn't direct the second, but he's back for episode 3 here. Kim, what did you think of Chapter 3 of Boba Fett?
Well, the streets of Mos Espa were down and dirty, weren't they? They were. I felt sorry for those guys in the workers' district. I think there was less to get excited about here than the previous episodes, and it kind of felt like it was mainly kind of setting up what's to come rather than kind of delivering anything particularly meaningful in terms of cool stuff or character development. But having said that, I'm enjoying the whole journey, as I said last week, and that's true here as well. But I like that the two strands are coming together now. The past is the flashbacks are feeding into the present, and how much personal tragedy can one man take? That sequence where he loses his adoptive Tuscan family could have been longer, but was so heartrending. So there was heartbreak, and also, it's building intrigue, which is interestingly keeping me hooked.
I didn't think this one was as strong as the second episode, which is my favorite so far. But there were actually a lot of fun minutia to it, a lot of fun elements to it, even as I do keep feeling like the present day stuff is fun, but lacking like momentum. It all seems like all the dramatic weight is in the flashbacks, and maybe that's by design, but it does leave the present day stuff kind of in this weird place where it just doesn't have that depth to it. Even has school. Let's talk a little bit about what you brought up though, which was, because there was a lot less flashback this week than either of the first 2 episodes. When he went into the back to this time, I'm like, oh, is the rest of the episode going to be a flashback? But it wasn't. So it was shorter, but it certainly was meaningful because, yes, he returns. He goes and kind of tries to make a deal on their behalf first. He's, negotiating. He's trying to get their cut and, stake their claim to their land. But then when he goes back, they've been killed. I had 2 minds about this. One was, it seems I think a lot of us guessed this was the ultimate fate of the Tuscans, because where are they? The ones that are his sort of adopted family. It seemed a little quick. Like, I thought we were going to spend more time with them together. But I also agree with you, Kim. It was very well done. Like I was like a little emotional there watching Tamora Morrison be teary-eyed Boba, at their gravesite. What do you think overall of like the decision to sort of kill them at this stage, and also the impact?
I mean, I suppose it was unexpected at this moment, and to do it kind of so brutally. And when I say brutally, I mean kind of quickly, because we didn't see the attack.
Right.
And that's more powerful. But I do feel kind of gutted that we'll never even know their names, let alone see their faces, as we were speculating might happen. I just this kind of relationship that he had been building with the youngling, the Tuscan youngling, I guess that's just, unless he somehow survived. So we didn't see his body, I don't think. Unless he survived, that's it, that's done, and that's tragic.
Yeah, I felt a little too early for that, and I hope, because there's wiggle room, as you mentioned, like we only saw the chieftain's body, I think, very specifically. We didn't see the warrior that had been training him, which many people have pointed out, by the way. One with the hand of the dreadlocks is played by a woman, but we're not even clear if the character is a woman. We didn't see him or her. We didn't see the kid. They could be dead but they could not be. Like there is that, and I hope they're not all, because yeah, it feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity to not have them continue on. Again, this is so early. This is still like, we assume within a year after Return of the Jedi, and there's several more years till The Mandalorian. So there is that question of what's he doing this whole time? I thought after last week, a good amount of that would be with this tribe. So we still need to know that. I hope though that they bring back at least one or two of these characters having made it to safety somehow. Because it just seems too early to Kurt there. But then let's talk about the present day stuff, which obviously was the brunt of it for the first time. There was a lot more of the present day stuff. A lot of interesting actor introductions here with some recognizable "hey, that's" moments. Let's start out with Stephen Root, who's in a million things. He's Milton in Office Space, though, forever. But he's a great "hey, it's that guy" character actor. What did you think of his introduction as Lortha Peel, the shady water salesman?
Yeah, he showed his face. You go, oh my God, it's Stephen Root.
Yeah.
That's cool. When's he going to be funny? But he was mean instead. He's, as you say, shady. And I liked this bit. I liked him more as a character, I think, than the gang that Boba takes under his wing. But yeah, I don't know if we'll see more of him. Do you think we'll see more of him?
Maybe. Like obviously the gang is a continuing presence, but he could pop up. I think if we don't see him in this season, he just feels like one of those characters on Tatooine now who could pop in and out. Sorry, go for it.
I just think he's perhaps just one of those examples of the people that are grinding out an unscrupulous living because they can get away with it at the moment, and Boba Fett is there to make things fairer and restore order, some kind of order to this society.
Right. It's interesting because with this show, which I'm like not like loving but enjoying, like this is the kind of stuff where while it's not like wow, like action-packed Pee-wee, I can't wait for the next thing. Seeing this minutia, like Boba is trying to figure out how he's going to be a leader, and here he has this guy coming to him who's basically like, people are stealing water from me, and if you help me get it back, I'll pay even more money to you. But then he kind of realizes this guy's ripping people off. So I like that as far as like, we're learning more and more about Boba, through his interactions with all these kind of various people and what is his code.
Yeah, and Tatooine and the kinds of small everyday people that exist in the Star Wars universe, and how the whole galaxy and the way it works affects the little person.
Right, exactly, and then how it intertwines, and if you're the crime lord of Tatooine, how will that affect you? Let's talk about the gang though. There's multiple biker gangs on this show. There's ones that are very bad, the ones that killed the Tuscans, but this is one that is more Heart of Gold, the sort of cyborgs that Boba decides to hire on the spot. A couple notable actors here amongst them. Jordan Bolger playing Scad with the eye. I know he's on Peaky Blinders, which still haven't seen Peaky Blinders. I can't even say the name right. I know him from The 100. And then Sophie Thatcher kind of had the most prominent role as Trash. Everyone, if you're not watching Yellow Jackets, oh my God, it's the best. Watch that show. She's great on it. But yeah, you mentioned a little bit about them. But yeah, elaborate, Kim, on your thoughts on these folks.
Well, first of all, I'll say I'm thankful that Boba Fett has some help at last, because they were a small band, and I was terrified. This is going off on a tangent, but I feel like the Gamorreans are kind of his new adopted children, and I felt that they were going to die at one point when Chrysanthemum rugby tackled them.
Right.
But anyway, yeah. So I mean, these guys were just a bit kind of gimmicky for me, I think, and while there was some good things about that chase through, I think we'll talk probably more about through the streets, I felt like it was kind of just an opportunity to go, hey, these guys from Elite that seem like they're from Elite Battle Angel have some cool enhancements, and look at their groovy bikes.
Yeah, I totally get that. I like I said, I come in with so much goodwill towards Sophie Thatcher because she's so great on such a great show right now. But yeah, like right now they're fairly like kind of one note. They're the cool kids, you know. They're coming with their cyborgs. I will say I will get back to the chase in detail, but I did like that little spike out of the foot one of the guys had at one point. But yeah, I think jury's out on them if we can get to know them a little better. But let's talk about that scene you mentioned with Black Chrysanthemum, who again are we saying his name right? I don't know. I saw even like the comic book creator who created him saying, I don't know, when people ask that.
Fennec says his name, doesn't she?
So she does, yeah.
So
we'll go with that. Yeah, let's go with that. Actually, I really loved that moment when he grabs him out of the back to tank. It's a good sort of jump scare in a Star Wars you don't expect a jump scare moment. Also, I thought it was kind of fun because it actually played with our expectations, because 2 episodes in a row, when Boba goes in that back to tank, it's flashback time, baby. And last week he never came out of it. So I thought this was a fun way to be like, nope, flashback over, giant Wookiee attacking you. Did you like this sequence?
I did. I mean, my first thoughts were, where the hell is Fennec? Why is she not protecting him? Which raises question marks maybe over her loyalty. But I loved, he was so slow, but so ferocious and powerful that there was no kind of overpowering him. It took all of those guys, and he had the gaffy stick stuck in his back, and it was like nothing. And then what's her name? Drask. That's her name, isn't it? She comes in with Drash, with the dagger, and it is like it hasn't even touched him. So I liked his slowness and his just kind of beastliness. He would have crushed Boba Fett to death had she not come in at that moment.
Yeah, it did a good job of, even for a split second, being like, oh, he's gonna get killed by this guy. And he's so ferocious. And people have joked a lot about the whole, like, Wookiees are known to tear your arms off if they lose thing, and how that's pretty dark if you think about it. And just the way he kept biting, like he was just like, he was a biter. I thought that was really cool because, as we mentioned last week, this is the first live action depiction of like an evil Wookiee, or a nasty Wookiee, at least. I know he's not 100% evil. So I thought that was really cool, just to show like, oh yeah, he's just, you don't want a Wookiee mad at you, right?
No, that underlines that. It's one of these moments in this show in particular that I know we kind of laughed about it or disliked it with Solo, kind of explaining things that we didn't know we needed answers to, right? And this show is doing that a little bit, with showing us how the Tuscans make their gaffy sticks, and here's showing us exactly how brutal a Wookiee can be, and also with the whole Rancor explanation, which I loved.
Me too. We'll talk about that in a sec. I'll mix in a couple questions here. Green Star saying, great to see a Wookiee gladiator in live action this episode. Thoughts on Christosan? You spelled it differently, Green Star. It's okay. It's a weird spelling. Reappearing this season. I thought for a second Boba was going to offer him a job. He's like, you get a job. Do you think he'll circle back into Boba's orbit, though?
I do. I think they'll join forces by the end.
I think that there's a good chance of that as well. Again, it's funny, we mentioned this last week, that like the comic books, which are canon, show that they already had met. This isn't explicitly mentioned, but it still seems like you can go with that. And there's just that like bounty hunter respect, even though Boba's not currently a bounty hunter, he's still cool with him. Let's talk about the Rancor you mentioned, because it is funny with this show. You were talking about how like explaining things we didn't necessarily need to be explained. But sometimes it's cool, sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. And the other funny thing is making us feel like bad for like characters we used to root for dying. So it's like like the Tuscan Raiders have gone from like, oh man, they're the worst, yeah, I killed them, to like, oh no, they are very heartfelt. And now the Rancor, Like, this is an emotional being. Maybe Luke should have been nicer to that Rancor.
I know, I'm so mad at Luke now.
Right? It's just retroactively going to make us mad at our heroes for how they treated these guys. What did you think of Rancor? And I've saved the best for last in terms of surprise actor appearances. Freaking Danny Trejo as an unnamed Rancor keeper. I mean, come on, Danny Trejo in Star Wars. It just feels like peanut butter and chocolate. This is a great mix.
I both hate and love that he didn't get a name.
Right? It's Machete.
Yeah, of course. But he'll be back because he's got to train Boba to ride this thing. So
yeah. I wondered at first if it was going to be almost like a rivalry when the thing about the first creature they see the kind of imprint on. I thought there was gonna be like who's going to actually take, but he seemed to be respectful that Boba was in charge.
But also, I mean, I guess that it seems like the Rancor kind of loves both of them. So, you know, there's room in his heart for more, or her heart, for more than one human. It
is a Rancor has two dads situation.
Yeah, my two dads.
I'm not mad about it. Scott Gillen says the only scene that really worked for me was the Rancor scene. I wouldn't say it's the only scene, but there was something pretty great about it, right? Just seeing Boba bonding with the Rancor.
Yeah, and also, you know, that we saw earlier in the episode that him petting the bantha that he was riding, and then he does it again here with the Rancor, and he shows no fear, and he has an empathy with them, and he's an animal lover. So that takes him up another level in my standings.
Right. It's interesting because I've seen one complaint I've seen about this show, and I understand it, is that because Boba Fett was somewhat of an enigma prior to all this, even seeing him as a little kid in the prequels, as an adult, he was kind of an enigma. So we're not seeing like a change per se, because we're not like, oh, this is what made him change. I understand that is valid, but at the same time, it's also just kind of interesting to reassess like who this dude was. Again, love to disintegrate if he took a bounty, but doesn't mean he doesn't love pets, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there's always more depth to characters, people in real life. There's more than one dimension to people.
Yeah. I so far I've really liked that, and I think that it's like these little moments of levity with him, have worked as far as just like they're not making him like goofy, but he can still like joke around a little bit. What do you think? To me, one big mark against this show, I will say, is they're not giving Fennec anything to do, and it's really surprising to me because Tamara Morrison and Ming-Na Wen are the only two like full leads of this show. They even credit and contractually wise, and it's just strange to me that so far, and maybe when you mentioned about maybe she has her own agenda, I'm like maybe, and I'm almost kind of hoping that because I thought they'd flesh her out a lot more. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's particularly, we're into the third episode now, and it felt really frustrating, particularly this episode, that she had quite little to do and she's subordinate. But then, I got to thinking that maybe she does have her own agenda. Maybe she's not completely loyal. That Chrysanthemum scene threw up questions for me, but also there's been something strange about the way she responds to Boba Fett and the way she talks to him throughout. She asks a lot of questions, and they're quite patronizing questions. You can see it that way. And she disobeyed him that time in the first episode when he told her not to kill the assassins, and she went and immediately she killed one off, even though they were both cornered. So there's something, I feel like there's something more to come from her.
I think that there's definitely, even if it's not, I don't know if it's as explicit as like she's betraying him, but I think you might be onto something as far as she doesn't seem to always agree with his more diplomatic approach, and that he's trying to tread more lightly, that you kind of get the idea that she was sitting on that throne, she might be a little more Jabba than he is being. Not 100% Jabba. You don't want to go 100% Jabba, but that she's a little more willing to get her hands dirty, and maybe that'll come to a head. But I think, you know, 3 episodes in, I think we just need a little more. Like, I'm almost hoping for an episode now to be really focused on her, you know, just to flesh her out. Let's talk about we mentioned it in passing. Well, let's talk for I'm going to go back and forth a little bit here. First, let's talk about the scene with the Hutts, where they end up with that Rancor. Just because, you know, there was some exposition here kind of filling us in on a little more of the deal with like the power structure and the 3 territories that, you know, Bib Fortuna put in place, and these Hutts basically coming and saying, we're out of here. You know, I will say I laughed a lot. I mean, I think intentionally it was a very funny moment of like, we sent Castaneda to kill you. We are sorry. Like, my bad.
Yeah, now we know that. Now we found out that there's another syndicate that Tatooine's been promised to. We're not going to get involved in this. You guys fight it out, which is what Boba Fett and Fennec think is probably their play. But interestingly, this is interesting to me. It may not be interesting to you. My friend sent me a text after they first appeared last week and telling me that they remind me of me and my brother because I'm a twin. So in my head, they're called Kim and Kevin.
Oh, wow. All right. We haven't given a name. There's just the twins. So
no.
Yeah, I'll go with Kim and Kevin. Why not? He had a little, I didn't notice that last week. This week, I definitely noticed he had a bucket for his little animal, his brow mopping animal. So,
super absorbent thing.
Right. I do like these guys. There's something about their like strangeness. And, you know, again, everything's questioned, you know, like Boba and Fennec don't know to really even believe them that they're taking off. It's an interesting thing, though, where there's a murkiness around. I don't think there's supposed to be a murkiness about who tried to kill him and what's really happening here. And it's starting to coalesce. It seems like it's the Pikes. That's who the mayor's working with. It just isn't as intense as I think they want it to be. But, you know, so what do you think, you know, with the Pikes showing up, it's like, are you, you know, all right, like our villains, or is it just more like, okay, that's who we're going towards?
Yeah, no, it still feels really unclear to me, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I haven't discounted the Hutts. The Pikes are being signposted as the main villains now, but are they working for someone else? And the Pikes have connections in the wider Star Wars universe with Darth Maul, and there's, you know, speculation that perhaps Crimson Dawn is a syndicate from the syndicate from Solo that Kira becomes involved in, right, in the wider lore, and maybe she'll turn up, who knows. But there is talk of syndicates that, and they talked about the Kintan Striders in this episode, and then Boba Fett referenced them as the Nikto Sand Riders, and so there's kind of deliberately this kind of murkiness built around all of the shady people. The mayor as well.
Yeah, that's true. Who didn't appear on screen, but Major Domo kind of represented here. Because the Pikes aren't like intrinsically going to be exciting, especially, frankly, for all the people who don't immerse themselves in all the other stories and have mostly stuck to the live action stuff, which is probably the majority of people. But you're right. It's like, I don't want to, like, you know, place all my bets on like, ooh, Darth Maul is going to show up in this show. But I think the reason it's even floated as a possibility is a couple reasons, which is, Solo's never going to get a straight up sequel, but the way Star Wars works, I'm sure we're going to find out more about what happened to Maul and Kira after that somewhere. And a show about crime that is involving the Pikes is certainly a route to do that. So it's certainly an interesting, like, maybe. You mentioned in passing, but let's talk about that chase, which was kind of the big climactic, chase through the streets of Mos Espa. Hey, that's the name of the episode. I actually think I enjoy this a little more than you. It was a purposely comical chase, I think, for most of it. The way that they almost ran into almost all the prominent kinds of droids in the Star Wars universe. There was a protocol droid, an R2 unit, there was mouse droids, there were pit droids. I sound like a salesman.
I'll have one of those, please.
Right. But I did enjoy it as like, because, you know, I don't think you can always play everything as like super intense or everything's on the line. So I did enjoy it as kind of like a bit of a purposely goofy chase sequence, I think.
Yeah, I did enjoy that side of it as well. And particularly, you know, watching the Major Domo's face as he's driving through, and he's a terrible driver and he's not even going that fast. None of them are. It's just how are they not stopping him before they do? Because he seems to me to be driving pretty slowly and bumping into everything in his ways.
Yes. We'll have to mention there's a couple of fun Easter eggs in this episode, and a big one was in this chase scene where a classic sort of chase scene where someone breaks through. Usually it's people carrying a mirror, but in this case it was art, and it was specifically art of Boba Fett, and it is real world art. That is a Ralph McQuarrie production design done for Return of the Jedi, that's been available, you know, for many years. There's the real version, which has Luke in it. The in-universe Star Wars version, there's no Luke. We must assume that the artist was hanging out before Jabba's final days. But I thought that was very fun. Also, Boba Fett is in that image. So just, I thought it was a fun way to sort of sneak in a little bit of real-world Star Wars lore into the in-universe there. Did you like the McQuarrie sneaking in there?
So cool. I wondered if they kept Luke out because, you know, they're erasing him from their
right. Forget that guy. They also, I think they turned 3PO into a bit more of a generic droid there. So yeah, they don't want to. I was like, either this is someone who wants to honor Jabba, or it's someone maybe who hated Jabba and wanted to be like, you know, screw that guy. But then they would have put Luke in there, right? Because it's like, that's the guy who took him down. The only other thing I want to say about the chase, because I enjoyed the chase. I don't think those we talked about, like, you know, Boba's new sort of gang of street kids. I didn't love their bikes, their bright and shiny bikes, which were obviously made. It was the closest that speeder bikes ever looked to a motorcycle, which is what they're supposed to be. I didn't like that flat bottom to them. It just looked like something you'd actually see in a arcade. Like, it seemed like a, you know, thing you'd get on. There was something a little off to me about that design. But
I mean, and I questioned where they got them from, because, you know, they've got no jobs, they've got no money. I guess they stole them, but where from, I don't know. I just, you know, my mind was just wondering how they got their hands on these. They're all the same, aren't they? So
I think so. Yeah, they're just painted different.
Yeah.
Another quick Easter egg I'll mention. I did like that when Boba in the flashback goes into Mos Eisley, not Mos Espa, Mos Eisley, they had in the background Peli Motto. That's Amy Sedaris' character from The Mandalorian. It looked like they just used the body double, just her walking in the background with some of her pit droids. And I thought that was a nice, like, you know, just that's a proper Easter egg. That's not someone coming on camera and being like, yeah, you remember me? It's just a hidden Sedaris in the back there. But yeah, I think, you know, you and I are pretty much in agreement here about it. It feels like the present day stuff. This was a fun episode, and I liked all these. We talked about the Rancors and chases and all, but I just wanted to have a little more weight. It's the flashbacks that seem to be carrying all that so far.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. After last week's, and I suppose that, you know, that was the weighty episode. This was deliberately designed to be a bit lighter, I guess. But I'm sure we'll get more weight as we go through.
Yeah. I will say I like, because we both didn't really love the action in the first episode, which was also Rodriguez's. I thought this one was like moved a lot better. It sort of just flowed a little better.
Yeah.
A couple comments here. Xeno Hour thinks he's totally going to side with the Pikes. What do you think about that? Like, instead of being like the main villains, is he just gonna broker a deal here?
All right, I thought that the commenter was going to side with the Pikes, and I thought, what
maybe he will. Maybe he's Team Pikes.
Well, maybe I didn't consider that, but maybe. I mean, when you look at his interactions with them in last week's episode, they seemed to part on good terms. It felt like there was a truce drawn, so perhaps.
And this episode right away proved that Bubba will forgive you for trying to have you killed with the Hutts, so,
Yeah.
and with Black Harrison, he's just like, hey, it's cool. So it is possible. And I almost hope it, because like I said, the Pikes right now, they themselves are not like ominous villains to us. Something would have to shift. So maybe he will make a deal with them. Bruins fan 1144 says, is it a Robert Rodriguez project without Danny Trejo? It's not, right?
No.
he had to be.
And he is going to be called Machete.
Because he called Machete in the Spy Kids movies first. So
Yes.
yeah. So until they give him another name, that Robert Rancor Keeper's name is Machete. Cinematography Mavira is getting very ahead of themselves and just says, can't wait for Kira. I mean, maybe. I wouldn't say definitely, but it's what do you think if Kira popped up in this show, which is set this show is set in the present of this show is about 5 or 6 years after Return of the Jedi. Is it just still Emilia Clarke? Because why not? Even though a different actor played Han Solo at the age she was playing Kira than Harrison Ford.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? But I can't imagine them recasting someone of her caliber. So
yeah,
maybe they can age her up.
Because I don't know the exact timeline, but I feel like Solo would be about 15 years before the events of this show, but maybe more, maybe closer to 20. But I still think you're right.
And I think we mentioned Maul, but obviously, spoiler for people who haven't watched Rebels, I do believe timeline-wise, Maul is...
Oh, you're right. Of course. Maul is a non-factor in present day of this show. Thank you. What a terrible Star Wars fan I was, Ryan.
You got to watch the hour-long entire Star Wars timeline YouTube video before every review. That's a requirement.
He supposedly died once.
Right,
exactly. That's why I say in quotes. They can always be like, screw it, bring him back, whatever.
Although they still have to follow up on what happened after Solo. But yes, Kira could come back in this timeline. And I do agree that if they could get Emilia Clarke, they get her, even if they have to age her up 15 years or whatever. They'll do it. Oh, they'll just say she ages well. Why not?
Gray hair.
Yeah, that's all it means. Couple streaks. Why not?
Stick on wrinkles.
2 Sons is great for the skin. It really does. Except for Obi-Wan's, apparently. But everyone else. Yeah.
Well, now we know that Tatooine used to be water. Like, things turned sucky there, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah. She's moisturized.
By the way, the water brought me Camino. Why do you think, Kim, 2 episodes in a row, we got the same seemingly unimportant moment, but Boba Fett flashbacking, we assume, in his sort of back to dream to his young self, watching Slave One, where we assume Django's on board, watching his dad fly away in a way that feels meaningful, but we don't understand because this isn't when his dad's flying off to die. He's with him when his dad dies. So what do you think the deal with this moment they keep showing?
I mean, if this moment actually happened, perhaps it's just something in his mind. Perhaps it's a symbolic moment of his dad leaving Camino, and flying out of his life, leaving his life, and him dealing with the trauma of it. Or I wondered if he maybe shares, because he's a clone of him, maybe shares some memories of Django's, and it's I don't know, a Django memory, although he wouldn't be watching himself from a distance like that, I suppose.
I think I mentioned last week that I wouldn't be shocked. I kind of expect that Tamora Morrison will play Django at some point, like via flashback or vision. It just keeps, because it's like this sort of like we're getting these, obviously we understand the death of his father was an important thing in his life, and now we're getting these little flashes of it. So it just seems like, some fleshing out a little bit more of that dynamic.
It just occurred to me, is he questioning his identity? Because he is a clone, and he's met this Tuscan youngling. We don't know that character's origins, whether the youngling may have been a foundling like Django, but and tied into all that, he's this clone and doesn't really have a real father or origin like most people in the universe, or creatures or characters in the universe have, which is to be birthed, I guess. And so maybe he's questioning Yeah, his meaning, his identity.
And I wanted to break into song.
Yes.
This is all me. I'll end with Little Buddha saying, "Loved Danny Trejo. He makes everyone else look less intimidating."
100%.
I mean, yeah, he doesn't need any Mandalorian armor. He's just Trejo. Just needs that cool tattoo he's got. Although I do like that right now he's just a Rancor keeper. He is just nice with animals, so we don't even know if this character has any fighting abilities, but he's got it, right? Like, he's Trejo. So.
He'll get involved, I expect. I just want to see Boba Fett riding that Rancor. The show better not let us down like Loki did. We never got to see Mobius on his jet ski.
I think this time, because it was, I agree, we should have gotten that on Loki, but there it was more like a, wouldn't it be great? But since he's so specifically like, train me to do this,
yes,
they got it, right?
You got to,
yeah. So, we'll see. Those are our thoughts on Chapter 3 of Boba Fett, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with more here at Fandom. Take care.